On today's episode of SEO Lunch, learn how to organize your evergreen content campaign with the rel equals canonical attribute. Hello everyone and welcome to episode number 53 of SEO Lunch. I'm your host Dan, and SEO Lunch is your weekly look at inbound marketing tips, search engine optimization tricks, and other resources to help you and your WordPress website. As always folks, this episode is brought to you by our Embrace WP service, priority support, custom web development. We answer your WordPress questions and more. Check it out at embracewp.com. We were recently talking about things like evergreen SEO and content auditing, and how it makes it easier to rank on Google and Google search engines and things like that. The reason is, if we had in the previous example from a few weeks ago had how to change the oil on a 2014 Corolla, we could continue to make articles, one for 2013, one for 2012, one for 2011, one for 2010, and change very little. But now we'd have, in that case, we'd have like 5 or 6 different articles, and you could just keep going down the line with the oil filters. This is always good for your website on paper because it means that there are more web pages out there that people can find to find the resource that they need. The issue is that that can be considered a spammy practice by Google. And the reason is simple. Let's say I just decide to abuse the system, as there's always going to be somebody who abuses the system. And I make 200 blog posts that are exactly the same. I just copy the text and change maybe a little bit of information and just post it out there. That's not good. It means that I have 200 posts that look the same, and maybe you've thought of doing it before, right? The problem is that this is not a good practice. What you do is use the rel equals canonical attribute, which we're going to talk about today. All right. So let's say in our example, we always use pizza sauce, right? So let's say we're selling, 10 different versions of pizza sauce, right? But the recipe for each one, the pages are all recipes, and the recipe for each one changes very little. Let's say we have a spicy pizza sauce, and the only difference is that in this recipe, you add a little bit of red hot sauce or something like that, and that's all you do to change it, right? Now, Google might think that if they see 2 different posts that are very similar, that it's spammy, but you're really just using 2 different recipes for 2 different types of people looking for 2 different things. You would enter the rel equals canonical attribute into the header tag at the top of your website. And there is an easier way to do this, which we're going to go over a little bit later on in this episode, okay? Using WordPress and using a certain plugin, okay? I think the best way to think about this rel equals canonical is if you're sort of a geek or something, and you've seen like a story like a Star Wars or something, right? And somebody goes out and creates a fan fiction or some alternate universe version of the same thing, right? The characters are the same, a lot of the plot points are the same, and the universe is the same, but you would consider that fan fiction to not be in canon. It's the same thing here. It's a very minor change to something that already exists. Good way to look at it, I guess. So the way you actually do this on WordPress is very simple. We use the WordPress SEO by Yoast plugin, which is a really great SEO plugin for free in the repository to do this. And if you aren't using WordPress, we highly recommend it because it's so easy to do this. You go right down to the bottom of the post you've created for that the pizza sauce, and under the advanced settings, there's actually a section where you can designate what the canonical tag is here. In this case, we can use traditional pizza sauce as the canonical tag. That puts it automatically in the header for you, so Google knows that basically this is meant for, it's a separate recipe. We know about it. We're not trying to be spammy here, and it just helps out, and that's why they do it. So a really, really cool tip there, kind of how to do it, why you should do rel equals canonical if you are doing things like evergreen content in the form of recipes, oil filters, whatever it might be, that's content. And I recommend, if you aren't familiar with evergreen content, checking out that video from a couple weeks ago on the SEO Lunch page. Again, this is brought to you by our Embrace WP service. We answer your WordPress questions, do some custom development for you, custom consulting on search engine optimization and other facets of your website. Thank you so much, guys.